Welcome back. There's something that you need to know before you actually start designing anything. We should not start Adobe XD or any other design program before we have wireframes or some type of documentation. This is a critical step. It's a fundamental point that you shouldn't overlook. Now listen, I come from a web design background where I sometimes work without any documentation, without any wireframes, right? But I can manage with a small brief. Here, in any mobile app design project, I always need them, no exception, even though I've been doing this for at least 7 years and I have more than enough experience. So why is this such a big deal? Well, in short, if the client changes his mind about a little thing, that little thing can take a whole lot of time and energy, especially on the coding side. Things like, let's just move the registration step from the beginning of the checkout process to the end. Now, this seems simple, but this can actually create a lot of frustration for the designer and especially for the developer. The client usually doesn't understand the huge implications. So let me tell you how you should approach these things. So before you design anything, you should go through a step-by-step process in a program like this one. This is Lucidchart, but you can use absolutely anything that the client wants. This is a place where decisions are made and where scenarios are played out. All the logic, all the questions about optimizing the user's experience, his flow, his willingness to register, subscribe or make a purchase, everything is handled here. All the avenues must be explored here. And that's because it's infinitely easier to make edits. Any sorts of changes are simple. And that's because this is the planning phase. This medium is extremely versatile. It's flexible. Whether it's whiteboards, pen and paper, digital flowcharts, or whatever else, this process is basically effortless and it's much more manageable. But try doing this in your design program in Adobe XD after you designed everything to be pixel perfect. Now, again, it's not a huge deal, but it's something that does take you back, especially in terms of prototyping. Now, don't get me wrong, edits are inevitable. Changes will happen no matter how well the project is documented. But the difficulty will be greatly reduced. You won't have to redraw the whole thing from scratch. You won't have to edit 15 screens because of one minor change. Instead, you're gonna edit a component and that's gonna change the entire app. But again, to sum this up, never start the design phase unless you have wireframes that specifically tell you what needs to be designed and some type of document that further describes details that are not immediately apparent. Without these things, the design phase will turn into a nightmare. So this is one of the reasons as to why a mobile app can easily cost $50,000. That's 50,000. It takes a lot of time. Now you may ask yourself, will I have to learn how to do this stuff in Lucidchart? No, and that's because the designer is usually not in charge. This is something that the client handles along with the project manager or the senior coder. You might participate in the meeting, but you're not the hero. Just watch and observe. Take notes if needed. Now in this course, we're gonna assume that the chart has already been handled. So we'll design various screens and apps by assuming that the client has reviewed and approved everything. In conclusion, please don't work without a brief and some wireframes. Even if the client says, oh, you know, it's a simple app, it looks like this one. Or just copy paste this app, it's about the same thing. Please don't do it, it won't work. Okay, let's continue.